All right. Let's see. Hussar's All-Consuming Hunger is their debut. This is a Toronto, Ontario-based death metal band, and definitely they're being sort of sold as a death doom metal band. I think I kind of have to contest that up front. I don't necessarily hear any relation to any form of doom metal here. Definitely is more of a progressive-minded uh, death metal album with some groove metal influences. Uh, I don't. I could not possibly mistake those sort of guitar techniques for anything related to Doom, and that's just a point of contention for me. Is that this is very much related to what I would consider late '90s, early 2000s. Basically, the foaming head of '90s guitar music, and what I mean is like the sort of stuff that influenced From Wisdom to Hate on Gorguts, and their sort of quiet step past Obscura. And I think that applies here because they get pretty involved with their rhythms. It's a trio. They put out a couple of tapes, and you can tell they have some experience here. They've selected each other for talent as well as camaraderie, I would assume, because they're fairly accomplished musicians without quite reaching that sort of pretentious level of meeting public standards. You know, it's still a death metal band, and they put out a couple of tapes so far, and most all of that material makes it onto here in some form. And so they've set the precedent. They've developed these songs over the course of about 4 years, and they all sound fantastic on this album. They've really polished it up. They've you can compare directly some of these earlier versions of the songs to the newer ones. You can see where they've added detail and voicing and considered all manner of layering and how that would work. You can hear in their live performances that they're the type that practices. You know, you can hear that they play well together and consider each other's experience as a whole. There's the and what I mean is that everything is woven together in a way that it fits quite well. It's lock and key for this band. So um, I was really impressed with the mechanics of the album. I think that there's a sort of a Voivod-esque lean to some of the songs. I think that there's a progressive bent to some of it, and a lot of it really relies on groove, but it doesn't rely on leads. And that's probably the only thing that would bother a lot of death metal fans is that there's a lot of a focus on groove and um, what I would call second guitar shaping and rhythmic sort of fiddling around, but not, you know, it adds to the voice of the record and what's memorable about it, and the progressions are emphasized in a meaningful way, but it's not exactly lead guitar playing, it's not traditional death metal. So that's just something to keep in mind. I don't think it's a negative. Um, so I don't have a lot of deep thoughts about this record. I think most of them are on the review here. I think that it's a really good debut album from a band I'd never really heard of before. So they made a great first impression. I think it is sort of the album that we see. Well, here's the bigger statement: is that we see a lot of death metal bands today delivering debuts when they shouldn't. They're just putting out records too fast, and they're not developing their sound into something unique. And I think that Hussar arrived with something unique, and they took their time to develop it into something more than interesting. So basically, I think they have kind of a leg up in that regard. But for me, it still needs more. It needs more layers. It needs more to it. And if you're a rhythm guitarist, I think this will probably be a mostly interesting album. Um, but it it still just sort of lacks around the edges for me as far as like, yes, I remember the songs. Yes, I'm back into it, and yes, I enjoyed myself every time I picked it up. But when I'm away from this album, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't ping in the back of my mind that I need to listen to it. So that's just a bit of an instinct for knowing that this is, it probably wouldn't last on my shelf, but it will be memorable from this month, you know, in the long run. So Take that as you will. Go ahead and read through the review. I don't have a ton of thoughts on it, so definitely give it a listen yourself and make your own decision on that.